Dr. Mehler coming at you with more bad news. This time, what I wanted to discuss is this little book, The Collapse of Western Civilization by Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway. It's the last reading in my 122 and my 277 class. So I wanted to say a few remarks and start off with talking about an introduction to the book itself and to focus on chapter 1, which is called The Coming of the Penumbral Age. And so let me start there, actually. A penumbra, because it's an unfamiliar word, a penumbra is the shadow cast by the Earth or the Moon in a partial eclipse. In other words, calling the era of the Penumbral Age is to say that we are living in the shadow that is blocking the light, not from the sun, but from science. Science is the metaphor here for the sun, and what exactly is blocking the light of science is the theme of the book. The book was commissioned by the National Academy of Sciences, which is a organization founded by Congress in 1863, inaugurated by Abraham Lincoln. It's the most prestigious organization of science in the world. They were charged to provide independent, objective advice to the government and to the American people on matters of science. And they were the ones who came to these two very famous, extraordinary historians of science, Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway, and they asked them to please see if they could write a book that could convince people, that could reach people, that could be simple, that would help people to understand the dire straits that we now live in. And they came up with this little book on the collapse of Western civilization, which is this really kind of fun combination of history and science fiction. It's in other words, they write this as if they are historians 1,000 years in the future, writing back about what happened to our civilization at this period in time. In other words, assuming that we will survive extinction, which is something that unfortunately is not going to happen. Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway had just completed Merchants of Doubt, and I'm going to play a little bit of that, the trailer to that movie, to give you a sense of what that's like. I'm going to share my screen. Let me go over here, screen share here, and here is the trailer.
Communication is about sales. Keep it simple. People will fill in the blank with their own, I hate to say biases, but with their own perspective in many cases.
The tobacco companies knew nicotine was an addictive drug, yet they told Congress,
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
you see the same small group of people that the tobacco industry used, working on all kinds of other issues.
Dioxins, pesticides, chemicals in general. I mean, there's no evidence that these are harming us.
Scientists will explain the science. Against the scientists, they will have a so-called expert.
A 7-week-old baby was in a crib.
I literally heard a gasp when he told the story about this baby.
Either one of you paid to testify for your time here in opposition to the bill?
Fire safety.
Citizens for Fire Safety, the 3 largest makers of flame retardants in the world.
Some of these so-called experts turn out to be very, very good at it.
I'm not a scientist, although I do play one on TV occasionally. Okay, hell, more than occasionally.
It creates a whole new cast of characters, these people who become well-known for casting doubt on global warming.
Catastrophic global warming is a hoax.
There's no scientific consensus.
You go up against a scientist, most of them are very hard to understand and very boring.
It's all about preventing you from looking where the action really is, which is in the science.
The Earth is getting warmer, no question about it.
It's kind of an amazing accomplishment. Such a small group of people have had an enormous impact on public opinion.
We're the negative force. We're just trying to stop stuff.
Well, that's it. What happened to the? I didn't turn it off, did I? All right. So that's what they were doing. It's an incredible book. I have the book, and it's a film really well worth watching. But I have supplied you with, there is a way of watching it on a little screen, kind of embedded. It's not the best. If you've got $3.99, rent the movie and watch it. But basically, Oreskes and Conway have been focused on the mystifying denial of science that has resulted in rampant gun violence, an opioid epidemic, catastrophic climate change, and our latest craziness, the refusal of large numbers of people to get vaccinated. And I will remind you that right now, Michigan has the highest infection rate in the nation. Our hospitals are at red alert, our ICUs are at 140%, and the holiday hasn't, the bump from the holiday we haven't peaked. That's why more people are going to get sick, and we are acting as if like nothing has happened. And this is the worst part. It hasn't been this bad ever for us. This is just as bad as it's ever gotten, and we're pretending that nothing's happening. You just go stroll through Walmart, you'll see. So let's start with some of the basics. What do the authors mean by the collapse of Western civilization? Let's start with Western civilization. What is Western civilization? And so, Western civilization is the civilization that we live in. It goes back to Greek and Roman civilization. It's European civilization. It's the European civilization that dominated the world, that colonized the world. It's made up of European white people who advanced in the Enlightenment, science, and science gave them power, and that power allowed them to then dominate the entire world, so that Africa and Asia were completely colonized, and then this Western civilization, this Western imperialist civilization, began to collapse in World War I. The three largest empires in the world collapsed: the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. And in World War II, the imperial nations of the world went to war against each other. And at the end of World War II, you have Africa and Asia emerging from centuries of European domination and colonization, and what you're watching is the collapse of this civilization. That's what's happening. Our civilization is collapsing, and they argue that that Western civilization, the people of Western civilization, knew what was happening, but they were unable to stop it. And they're talking about now about climate change. In other words, we know, we've known since the 1970s that the planet was getting hotter because of greenhouse gases. But the question is, I mean, do you really know what is happening, and do you agree that there's some way to stop it, but we can't do that? So there were three phases of the Industrial Revolution. The initial Industrial Revolution begins in England, 1750 to 1850. Then comes Germany and the United States and Europe, 1850 to 1980. And then finally, China, India, and Brazil industrialized between 1980 and the present. And each one of those gave a huge bump to the amount of fossil fuels that we were putting into the environment. By the 1970s, it was already clear that we were living in an anthropogenic era. That is, that the dominant force on the planet were human beings and their activity. The planetary sinks are basically places where you throw pollution, and if those sinks fill up, in the 60s there was a belief that that the solution to pollution was dilution. That is, if you dilute it enough, it's not gonna be harmful. But DDT in the 1960s was shown that it could disrupt reproductive function in fish, birds, and mammals, and it was having a serious effect. And so we agreed to, and we means governments agreed to stop the manufacture and use of DDT. We also discovered that CFCs, the chlorofluorocarbons, were destroying the ozone layer, and this resulted in the Montreal Protocol, and in 1988, 1992, these agreements, and the beginning of the climate change movement, the creation of international organizations like the International IPCC, the International UN Climate Change Organization, and in what you had was the emergence of a backlash against climate action. And George H.W. Bush already had said that, yeah, everybody agrees, the Republicans agree, Democrats agree, everybody agrees, and we're going to do something about the fossil fuel emissions, and we're going to bring them down, and we're going to deal with climate. But then when the fossil fuel industries, which were the largest and most powerful in the world, saw that their profits were going to be cutting into, they began a massive campaign to cast doubt, and they have been enormously successful. So that's what chapter 1 is about. There is more to the chapter, and I'll leave it to you to read and hopefully enjoy. This is a very interesting reading. We'll get to you later and talk about chapter 2. In the meantime, have a happy and wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourself and take a break. But remember that your term papers should be due on the 28th.